77,000 years ago, someone on the southern coast of Africa drilled tiny holes into the shells of sea snails. They strung them together. They carried them inland, sometimes hundreds of miles, and traded them with people they had never met. The shells were worthless as food or tools, but they meant something, a signal to the future, to strangers, to someone not yet present. That act of reaching toward an unseen tomorrow is one of the earliest things we know about hope. Hope is strange. Every other emotion responds to something real. Fear has a predator. Anger has an injustice. Grief has a loss. But hope points at nothing, only at what might be. It requires a mind capable of projecting itself forward in time and deciding that the future is worth investing in right now. For most of our evolutionary history, that may not have been possible at all. The neuroscience of hope lives in the dopamine system. When you anticipate a reward, not receive it, only anticipate it, a cluster of cells in your midbrain fires intensely. Dopamine floods the prefrontal cortex, sharpening attention and motivating action. What you are feeling is not pleasure. It is the drive toward a future you cannot yet touch. Researchers call this anticipatory reward processing. For the people who first strung those shells, something very similar was happening in their minds. But hope requires more than dopamine. It requires what psychologists call mental time travel, the ability to simulate a future moment as if you were already there. This capacity depends on the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex working together. Interestingly, the same neural systems that allow you to remember the past also allow you to imagine the future. Memory and hope share the same architecture. They are built from the same material. When did this architecture come online in our ancestors? Brain size alone is not enough. Neanderthals had brains as large as ours, perhaps larger. What changed in Homo sapiens was connectivity. Around 100,000 years ago, there is evidence of a shift in the way the prefrontal cortex integrated with subcortical structures. The result was a mind that could plan not just days ahead, but seasons, not just for oneself, but for people not yet born. The Blombos Cave in South Africa contains some of the earliest evidence for this shift. Alongside those shell beads, archaeologists found geometric engravings on ochre, abstract patterns with no obvious survival value. They found toolkits stored in abalone shells, different pigments, bones for mixing, grindstones. This was prepared material, assembled for a future use that had not yet arrived. Someone gathered these things knowing they would need them later. That is hope in its most practical, prehistoric form. Long-distance exchange networks are another signature. By 100,000 years ago, obsidian and pigments were moving across hundreds of kilometers, passing through many hands. No single person could have tracked the entire chain. Yet someone at the beginning of that chain invested effort, trusting that the object would reach someone useful. They were extending trust and effort into an unknown future. They were hoping the exchange would hold. Compare this to our closest relatives. Chimpanzees plan ahead in limited ways. They will carry tools to termite mounds or remember the location of ripening fruit. But they do not make objects for future strangers. They do not cache items for a season they cannot yet experience. Their temporal horizon is short. Hope, in the sense of projecting meaning toward a distant and uncertain future, appears to be a deeply human capacity. Neanderthals occupy an interesting middle ground. For decades, scientists believed they had no symbolic thought at all. Then evidence accumulated. Pigment use in Spain dated to 115,000 years ago. Eagle talons strung as jewelry in Croatia 130,000 years ago. Shell ornaments from Italy that predate modern human arrival in Europe. Whether this constitutes hope in the full sense remains an open question, but it suggests the capacity was stirring in parallel in a different branch of our family. The most powerful signal of hope in the archaeological record is the burial of the dead with objects. At Skull Cave in Israel, 100,000 years ago, a man was buried holding the lower jaw of a wild boar. At Sungir in Russia, 34,000 years ago, two children were laid in a grave together, covered in more than 10,000 ivory beads that would have taken years to carve. These were offerings to a destination nobody could see. They imply a belief, or at least a wish, that something continues beyond death. That is hope extended past the limit of life itself. Children teach us something about hope's development. Psychologist Charles Snyder showed that genuine future-oriented hope requires not just wishing for an outcome, but believing your own actions can bring it about. Hope is not passive wishing. It is wishing combined with the felt sense that you can help make it happen. That cognitive distinction was almost certainly the last piece to emerge in our evolutionary ancestors as well. Archaeologist Lambros Malafouris argued that early human tool use reflects exactly this posture. The sustained effort required to knap a hand axe. Hours of careful work producing a tool that outlasts any single need. Implies a mind oriented toward a future that hasn't arrived. You are building a capacity for a hunger you know will come. That orientation may be one of the earliest roots of hope as a psychological state. There is a darker context to hold here. Hope does not arise in paradise. It arises in precarity. The African savanna where our ancestors evolved was a place of drought, famine, and the deaths of children before they could walk. The baseline of early human existence was loss. Hope may have been the psychological innovation that made it possible to absorb that loss without surrendering to it, to bury your child with ivory beads and still rise the next morning and hunt. Psychologist Barbara Fredrickson's broaden and build theory suggests that hope doesn't simply feel good. It expands the range of actions a person considers possible and builds social bonds. In a group under pressure, hope is contagious. One person's orientation toward a survivable future can reorganize the behavior of everyone around them. Evolution may have selected for hope because groups with more of it simply survived better. The shell beads from Blombos were found far from the coast where they were made. They traveled. Somewhere along that chain, someone looked at a small perforated shell and understood it had come from a distant place, carried by people they did not know, and would pass to people they would never meet. That object was a message from the past to the future. It said, "We were here. We made something. We believed someone would find it worth carrying." That is the archaeology of hope, not as a warm feeling, but as a cognitive technology, a way of organizing action around an imagined future, a willingness to invest now in something that will only pay off later for someone who may not even be you. In a species with no guarantee of making it through any given winter, that orientation was revolutionary. We inherited it. Every time you plant something you won't eat for months, or save money for a year you can't picture, or tell a child they will be okay, you are running the same neural software those early humans were running on the cliffs above the Indian Ocean. The future is uncertain. It has always been uncertain. Hope is not the denial of that uncertainty. It is the decision to act as if the uncertainty is worth pushing through. When did ancient humans first feel hope? We can point to its signatures, the beads, the burials, the long-distance exchange, the stored toolkits, and say, by 100,000 years ago, something was definitely there. Whether the first flicker came earlier, in a Neanderthal stringing eagle talons by a fire in Croatia, we may never know. But the capacity was already ancient by the time history began. It is one of the oldest things about us. And if you have ever gotten up when everything was telling you not to, you already know exactly what it felt like.